Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas is a 1978 Schwarzkopf custom looping coaster. It was the first ever coaster to open with 2 consecutive vertical loops and is one of my favorite rides at the park. Why? Well, let me show you. After taking the trek to the back corner of the park where Shockwave is located, you are greeted by the ride's lift hill, a couple of benches, and the entrance. Entering the queue is strange. There used to be extended queue space right when you entered, but that no longer exists, so you have to go in through the left side of the entrance sign. After climbing a series of long ramps that may or may not have dirty water sitting there, you enter the station. For me, it's either a front row or a back row ride. No in between. The front row is where the forces in the loops are, and the back row is where the ejector airtime is at. I almost always choose the back. As you sit in the train, you'll notice the restraints on this ride are fairly minimal. There is a seatbelt and a thin ratcheting lap bar. On the ejector pops in the back row, you can get thrown into that lap bar pretty hard, so beware. After exiting the station, you begin to climb the 116-foot tall lift hill. It usually goes pretty slow to start out with until the other train re-enters the station. Once you reach the top of the lift hill, you go through a small drop into a turnaround, which then leads into the actual first drop. The first drop isn't too special, you don't get too much airtime even in the back rows. However, the following 2 elements are wildly different. The most intense element in America, the back-to-back vertical loops. No matter where you're sitting on the train, those loops are crazy intense. I begin to lose my vision every single ride, especially in the front row. They feel so intense due to their design. Anton Schwarzkopf really liked circular loops instead of the teardrop or clothaway loop alternative. I guarantee you that on every roller coaster with a circular loop, it feels way more intense than the more standard clothaway loop. Following the 2 loops, you rise up into the ride's safety brakes. This is part of the ride's block zone system, and these brakes can do 2 things. 1, they can trim the speed of the train to make sure it's not going too quickly through the rest of the ride. And 2, it can fully stop a train in case the brakes ahead are still occupied by the other train. After the trims, you go through another turnaround into one of the ride's insane drops. In the back row, this drop gives some amazing and violent ejector airtime, throwing you out of your seat and straight up into that lap bar. You may want to brace yourself for that moment. After the first ejector drop, you enter a small upwards ramp into the 3rd turnaround so far, which then leads into most people's favorite part of the ride, the ejector drop. No matter what seat you're riding in, this drop will give you airtime. In the back, it's not so much airtime as it is throwing you straight up into the restraint. The airtime is genuinely so violent and almost painful to the point that even I have to hold on most times I ride. After the ejector drop, you go into a really floaty hill that gives some great airtime in the front rows of the train, which then leads you into the final part of the ride, which isn't too exciting. It's basically just a ramp into another turnaround into the brakes. However, if you're not expecting it, those brakes can be violent. The train decelerates very fast on those final brakes, so be careful not to slam your head into the headrest. Once you exit, you will be funneled under the station and back out directly where you came from. If there isn't a line, which there most likely won't be, I would highly recommend riding this again in a different seat to experience the best out of this ride. If you didn't like the intense airtime in the back of the train, hop into the front row and feel the intensity of those vertical loops. I love Shockwave. It is one of my favorite roller coasters at Six Flags Over Texas, and I can't get enough of it. If you'd like to see more roller coaster reviews, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Go check out my most recent Over Texas update, where I go look at the progress of Titan's repaint and the land clearing of Lava Bora. Have a great rest of your day.